Saturday, August 19, 2023, was supposed to be a day of joy, the kind that lives in family photo albums and childhood memories for years to come. The Robinson family home sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in Cedar Hill, Texas. A two-story colonial with white trim, a red door, and a neatly manicured lawn. That morning, it looked like something out of a Hallmark postcard. Pastel balloons lined the front porch railings. Streamers danced in the breeze. Folding tables with lavender tablecloths were set up in the backyard beneath a rented canopy, where gift bags stuffed with sparkly tiaras and bubble wands awaited the guests. It was Ava Robinson's 8th birthday, and her parents, Matthew and Danielle, were determined to make it magical. Ava had chosen the theme herself, a princess party. And not just any princess. She wanted a castle, a crown, and a kingdom. She got it all. There was even a giant inflatable bounce house shaped like a turreted tower, where the children shrieked with glee as they bounced and flipped inside. Danielle, a second-grade teacher, had started planning weeks in advance. Her Pinterest board was overflowing with ideas, from DIY glitter wands to sugar cookies shaped like glass slippers. Matthew, a local HVAC technician with a loud laugh and a knack for grilling, manned the backyard smoker, flipping burgers and ribs for the dozen or so adults mingling near the picnic tables. Family friends had come from across town. Danielle's younger sister, Monica, a nurse, was live-streaming the celebration for their parents who couldn't make the drive from Houston. Her phone captured footage of Ava squealing in delight as the birthday cake, a two-tier pink masterpiece with fondant roses and a golden tiara, was rolled out to the Happy Birthday chorus. Mr. Jingles, the hired clown with a rainbow wig and a perpetually squeaky horn, performed balloon tricks for the kids, occasionally tossing out corny one-liners that got more groans than giggles from the adults. It was a beautiful day, sunny, with only a few wisps of cloud crossing the sky. But even then, something felt off. Not obviously. Not in a way anyone could quite articulate. Maybe it was the way Mr. Jingles kept glancing over his shoulder between acts. Maybe it was the unfamiliar silver sedan idling down the block for nearly 20 minutes before driving away. Or maybe it was nothing at all. Maybe that's just how hindsight works after a tragedy. It makes you see signs where there were none. At 6:45 p.m., the party began to wind down. Children started to grow cranky from sugar highs and sun exposure. Parents rounded up their little ones, thanked Danielle and Matthew, and filtered out, waving goodbye. Monica offered to stay behind to help clean up, and one or two neighbors lingered to chat by the driveway. By 7:10 p.m., there were only a handful of people left at the house. Matthew, Danielle, Ava, Monica, and two family friends, Trish and her husband Leonard, who were collecting their toddler's scattered toys from the backyard. Then, something happened. At precisely 7:23 p.m., Cedar Hill Police Department received a frantic 911 call from Trish. "We need help. Please, please, there's blood. Oh God, there's blood everywhere. Please hurry." In the background of the call, there were muffled screams, a crashing sound, and then, silence. Police units arrived on the scene just 4 minutes later. What they encountered was chaos masked in eerie calm. The bouncy castle had deflated in one corner of the yard, sagging like a dead beast. The scent of grilled meat still hung in the air, but it was overpowered by something metallic, the sharp, unmistakable smell of blood. Officers entered the home with weapons drawn. The living room was a scene of carnage. Balloons popped and trampled, red streaks smeared across the floor, paper plates abandoned mid-meal. Danielle Robinson was found first. She was slumped against the wall near the kitchen, her eyes wide open, lifeless. A jagged wound ran across her neck. Blood had soaked through her blouse and pooled around her legs. Matthew's body was discovered in the hallway, face down, with multiple stab wounds in his back and chest. Near him was a cake knife, snapped in half. Monica lay near the bottom of the staircase. She had tried to run. One shoe was missing. Her cell phone was still recording, the lens pointing upward, capturing a silent ceiling fan spinning above her motionless body. It wasn't until officers cleared the upstairs bathroom that they found the only survivor. Ava, the birthday girl. She was wedged inside the bathroom cabinet under the sink, knees tucked to her chest, trembling uncontrollably. Her party dress, a sparkly pink gown with puffed sleeves, was soaked in blood. Not hers, they would later confirm. But someone else's. Likely more than one person's. She couldn't speak at first. Couldn't move. Just stared at the flashlight beam with wide, unblinking eyes, as if uncertain whether the nightmare was truly over. It wasn't. Not yet. And as investigators began to sweep the home, documenting the horrific scene, questions multiplied. Why would anyone massacre a family during a child's birthday party? Who had stayed behind after most of the guests had left? And perhaps most chilling of all, why hadn't Ava screamed? The paramedics said it was a miracle. Ava Robinson had no visible injuries. Her pulse was elevated, her skin clammy, and her body shaking uncontrollably, but she was alive, and that in itself was a miracle. Officers had found her wedged beneath the bathroom sink, eyes wide, jaw clenched so tightly it took nearly an hour for her to speak a single word. At 8:13 p.m., she was carefully lifted from the cabinet and wrapped in a gray fleece blanket. Officer Kelsey Donahue, a mother of two, knelt beside her and offered her a juice box. Ava took it without looking up. She hadn't blinked in minutes. "Can you tell me your name, sweetheart?" Kelsey asked gently. No answer. "You're safe now. My name's Kelsey. You're not alone anymore." Still nothing. It wasn't until she was placed in the back of an ambulance and a female EMT gently touched her arm that Ava whispered it, her first word since the massacre. "He hurt my mommy." That was enough to stop everyone in their tracks. Kelsey climbed into the ambulance alongside her, riding all the way to Cedar Hill Medical Center. Officers, meanwhile, remained behind, scrambling to cordon off the scene. News of the slaughter was spreading, first by word of mouth, then rapidly across social media. What had started as a child's birthday party had ended in the brutal slaughter of nearly everyone in attendance. 3 people confirmed dead. 1 survivor, a child. 2 more guests were missing. The whereabouts of Trish and Leonard Mitchell remained unknown. Blood spatter was found near the back gate, and bloody footprints, barefoot, trailed toward the wooded area just beyond the yard. It was hard to tell if they were fleeing or chasing someone. Inside the hospital, Ava Robinson was kept under observation for the night. Doctors ruled out head trauma and found no physical signs of abuse. She was placed under protective custody in the pediatric ward while officers waited for a child psychologist and forensic interviewer to arrive. No one wanted to re-traumatize her, not more than she already had been. But time was critical. The lead detective on the case, Amanda Valdez, was called in just after midnight. She was 39 years old, known for her tenacity and calm demeanor. Over the past decade, Amanda had seen her fair share of grisly crime scenes, but nothing like this. Nothing that involved party hats and birthday balloons lying next to corpses. Nothing where the sole survivor was a little girl in a blood-stained princess gown. At 6:30 a.m., after careful coordination with specialists, Ava was finally interviewed. The session took place in a quiet room painted with murals of animals and clouds. Toys lined the shelves, untouched. Ava sat at a small table, hands in her lap, her voice soft and raspy. The psychologist guided her with patience, avoiding direct questions and allowing Ava to speak on her terms. "It started like this. I heard screaming. Mommy said to hide, so I did. I went to the bathroom. I closed the door. I didn't want to be loud. Did someone come into the bathroom, Ava?" A long pause. "Yes. Do you know who it was?" Another pause. Then, in the smallest voice yet, "It was Uncle Leo." The interview stopped. A family friend of over 12 years. Godfather to Ava. Husband of Trish Mitchell, Danielle's close friend since college. The Robinsons and the Mitchells had taken vacations together. He had attended every birthday party Ava had since she turned 2. He was the kind of man who picked up trash that wasn't his and insisted on saying grace before every meal. A deacon at the local Baptist church. Quiet, friendly, unremarkable. Now, he was missing, and possibly covered in blood. Amanda Valdez immediately issued a bolo. Be on the lookout for both Leonard and Trish Mitchell. The silver sedan seen earlier that day was traced back to Trish, registered under her name. Her phone was last pinged at a rest stop nearly 70 miles outside of Cedar Hill. Authorities reviewed home surveillance from neighbors. At 7:05 p.m., Trish and Leonard were seen laughing beside their car in the driveway. Nothing seemed off. But by 7:19 p.m., just 4 minutes before the 911 call, footage showed Leonard sprinting back toward the backyard. Alone. He never came back out. While the manhunt expanded, autopsy reports came in for Danielle, Matthew, and Monica. Danielle Robinson suffered a deep slash to her carotid artery and signs of a struggle, bruising on her wrists and upper arms. The weapon was likely a kitchen blade, not the snapped cake knife found near Matthew. Matthew Robinson's injuries were rage-driven. Multiple deep stab wounds to the torso and face. The medical examiner noted, "Overkill. No hesitation. Personal." Monica's cause of death was a single stab wound to the chest, directly to the heart. She never saw it coming. Surprisingly, none of the wounds matched a knife typically carried or used in a spontaneous attack. They were clean, purposeful, suggesting the weapon had been brought with the attacker. Back at the crime scene, investigators scoured the Robinson house for clues. In Ava's room, they found nothing but toys and storybooks. In Matthew and Danielle's bedroom, they found Danielle's planner. Tucked inside, it was a handwritten note dated August 15th, for days before the massacre. "Matt thinks it's just paranoia, but I know something's wrong. Leo's been acting weird lately. Too intense. He cornered me in the hallway during Ava's last recital and said something strange. I brushed it off, but now I can't stop thinking about it. Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe I'm overthinking. But I'm not letting him babysit Ava again. Ever." Detective Valdez read the note 3 times. This wasn't random. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was personal. And if Ava was right, if Leonard Mitchell was the one who killed her parents and godmother, the question that haunted everyone now was. By sunrise the next morning, Cedar Hill was no longer a quiet town. The scent of blood had reached every corner of the internet. Local headlines screamed variations of the same horrifying message. Birthday party bloodbath. 3 dead, child survivor names godfather as killer. Family friend now prime suspect in triple homicide. Where is Leonard Mitchell? Within hours, national media trucks lined Maple Avenue. Cameras rolled just beyond the yellow tape outside the Robinson residence. Neighbors stared from behind curtains, and whispers of Uncle Leo slithered from household to household like an urban legend in real time. Detective Amanda Valdez stood outside the makeshift command post, a white tent erected on the Robinsons' front lawn, as state troopers and FBI agents began pouring in. There was no time to waste. Leonard Mitchell, once a familiar face in community cookouts and Sunday church services, was now the most wanted man in the state. But the biggest question still lingered. Was Trish Mitchell alive? Or his next victim? The breakthrough came at 9:42 a.m. Surveillance footage from a gas station just off Interstate 20 showed the silver 2012 Honda Civic registered to Trish Mitchell pulling into a pump around 8:17 p.m. the night of the murders, less than 30 minutes after the 911 call was placed. Inside the store, a tall man with a dark hoodie and visible blood on his right hand was caught on camera purchasing a gas can and a pack of gum. He didn't speak. He didn't make eye contact. And he never removed the hood. The timestamp showed he paid in cash. The car was seen leaving westbound toward the forested rural areas that bordered the county. No license plate was visible. The rear plate had been removed. Detectives feared what that meant. You don't remove a license plate unless you're planning to disappear, Amanda muttered, watching the footage on loop. But there was something else. The attendant working the counter, a 19-year-old college student named Brandon Chase, recalled something eerie. "I could swear I heard a woman crying in the back seat," he said. He hadn't thought to say anything sooner. He thought maybe it was a child, or someone upset. Now, knowing what he knew, he was certain. Someone was in that car, and they didn't want to be. Using emergency warrants, investigators gained access to Trish Mitchell's phone records. Though her cell phone was now off, her last outgoing call had been placed at 7:22 p.m., right as chaos unfolded at the Robinson home. The call lasted 14 seconds. It was to Danielle Robinson. It was never answered. Instead, audio from Danielle's voicemail caught a disturbing snippet of background noise before the message cut off. A scream. It was short, high-pitched, then a thud, then silence. Techs tried to enhance the audio. They were able to identify one distinct sound layered beneath the chaos, the chime of a back door opening. Around noon, search dogs combing the wooded area behind the Robinson property uncovered a small, shallow ditch. Something shiny protruded from the loose soil, a set of keys. Beneath it was a woman's earring, snapped in half, with dried blood on the clasp. There were drag marks in the grass, barely visible now after a morning rain. Blood samples confirmed the DNA, Trish Mitchell. But there was no body, no footprints leading away from the ditch. Only the faint impression of tire tracks, a second vehicle, separate from the silver Civic. This wasn't just a killer on the run. This was a planned extraction. Back at the hospital, Ava Robinson, now fully under protective custody, provided a second, more detailed account. With the help of a child trauma specialist and some distance from the initial shock, her memory began to fill in painful details. Uncle Leo was mad at Mommy. He said she was going to ruin everything. Mommy yelled at him. She said to get out, that she knew what he did. Then he pushed her. And then she was bleeding. The interviewer asked gently, "Do you know what she meant by what he did, sweetie?" Ava's eyes dropped. He hurt someone before. Those 4 words shattered the entire investigative timeline. What did Danielle know? Detective Valdez requested a deep background check on Leonard Mitchell. On paper, he was clean. No arrests, no criminal complaints. But in the town of Marion, just 40 miles west, something odd popped up. In 2012, a woman named Sierra Dalton filed a restraining order against Leonard Mitchell. She was 23 at the time, a server at a diner Leonard frequently visited during a construction project out of town. The restraining order detailed stalking, disturbing messages, and a forced encounter in the parking lot of her apartment. But the complaint was dropped 2 weeks later. No charges were filed. 3 months later, Sierra Dalton vanished. Her case remained unsolved. She was last seen walking home from her shift. Her car was found abandoned, locked, with her phone inside. Nothing else. Just an eerie silence. And one more note, Danielle Robinson had grown up in Marion. She and Sierra had gone to the same high school. A class photo from senior year showed them standing just 2 rows apart. That changed everything. What was originally seen as a sudden burst of violence, a spontaneous act of rage, was now beginning to look like the climax of something much longer and darker. If Danielle had suspected Leonard of involvement in Sierra's disappearance and had confronted him during Ava's party, then the murders weren't just personal. They were about silencing a secret. Trish Mitchell might have known too much. Or maybe she was trying to leave. Maybe that 14-second call was a desperate warning. Either way, the clock was ticking. By 6 p.m., a multi-agency task force launched an official manhunt for Leonard Mitchell. His face was plastered on every news station. Highways lit up with amber-style alerts. Drones were deployed over the forest, and roadblocks were set up along key highways leading toward neighboring counties. But Leonard had at least a 20-hour head start. And a second vehicle, still unidentified. The silver Civic was found abandoned in a state park 112 miles west, near the Louisiana border. The gas can was missing. So was the license plate. But a single scrap of paper sat in the cup holder. On it, scrawled in rushed handwriting, "She should have kept her mouth shut." There was no signature, just a fingerprint smeared in dried blood. In the days following the massacre, the town of Cedar Hill began to lose its sense of normal. Parents no longer let their children play outside. Neighbors who once exchanged baked goods now traded suspicion. There were no more birthday balloons on Maple Avenue. Only memorial candles, wilting flowers, and stuffed animals beneath rain-soaked photographs of the Robinson family. Danielle's radiant smile stared out from those photos, frozen in time, permanently etched into the tragedy. But in the quiet, behind police tape and flickering TV segments, something more chilling was unfolding. Danielle Robinson had known something, and someone had killed to keep her silent. On the second day of the investigation, Danielle's sister, Erica Monroe, arrived in Cedar Hill from Chicago. She was inconsolable when she saw the house, the blood-stained carpet inside, the yellow tags still numbering the pools of evidence like tombstones. Erica had one thing on her mind: Danielle's puzzle box. It was an old wooden jewelry box, handed down from their grandmother. But Danielle never used it for jewelry. It was her safekeeping box, where she stored things she didn't want anyone else to see. As a teenager, it had held love notes and secret photos. In college, it held journal entries and letters from a guy she dated who turned out to be married. And in adulthood, Danielle never said. But 2 weeks before her death, during a phone call with Erica, she mentioned something strange. "If anything ever happens to me," Danielle had said, half-joking, "look in the puzzle box." Seriously. Now, Erica needed to know what was inside. The box was found in Danielle's bedroom closet, buried behind old sweaters in a clear storage bin. Detectives had cataloged it, but hadn't forced it open. It wasn't locked, but it had a peculiar mechanism: a sliding compartment hidden beneath a false bottom. Inside the secret compartment was a sealed white envelope. It was addressed in Danielle's handwriting. The name on the front. Amanda opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single page, typed. Danielle's name signed at the bottom. It began, "I don't know what to do with this information. But if something happens to me, or if Leonard ever gets too close, you need to know what I found." Danielle went on to explain that she had recently reconnected online with an old high school friend, Janelle Moretti, who now worked as a freelance investigator for a true crime podcast. Janelle had taken an interest in the disappearance of Sierra Dalton, the woman who vanished back in 2012, the same woman Leonard had once stalked and harassed. Through old yearbooks and private forums, Janelle had tracked down a few of Sierra's former friends, and one of them, a woman named Eliza Romero, had made a horrifying claim. "Sierra was terrified of Leonard," Eliza had said. "She told me she thought he followed her on a camping trip. One night she said she saw him outside her tent, just watching." Even more damning, Leonard Mitchell had reportedly been working on a construction crew near that same camping site the week Sierra disappeared. It had never been mentioned in the original investigation. Danielle was shaken. But she didn't stop there. She began digging into Leonard's past herself. Danielle's notes, printed and tucked behind the letter, revealed something darker still. She had driven out to Leonard's former property, a house he'd inherited from his uncle, now abandoned and up for sale. The photos showed a dusty basement with rusted tools and crumbling cement. But one image stood out. It showed a dirt floor, with something poking through the soil. A faded, moldy piece of cloth, possibly a shirt sleeve, and what appeared to be bone. Danielle had called the local sheriff's office but claimed they brushed her off. They told her the place had been inspected years ago. No evidence of foul play was ever found. But Danielle wrote that she didn't trust them. She believed someone was covering something up, or just didn't want to dig deep enough. The most damning discovery, however, came from her laptop. Amanda's team, working with cybercrime techs, uncovered a hidden folder labeled, "For Erica," or "Police." Inside was a 57-second video. It was shot in Danielle's bedroom, her voice hushed but firm. The timestamp was from 4 days before her death. "I think Leonard killed Sierra Dalton. I think he's dangerous, and I think he's watching me. Trish doesn't want to believe it, but I saw him near my work last week. He doesn't live in town anymore. Why would he be here? He's up to something, and I'm scared." The last seconds of the video showed Danielle glancing nervously out the window. "If something happens to me, don't let him disappear. He doesn't just kill. He erases people." That line struck everyone like a hammer to the chest. With Danielle's documents in hand, Detective Valdez began re-interviewing people connected to Leonard's past. The most significant was Melanie Griggs, a bartender from a town 60 miles north. Melanie had dated Leonard for 3 months in 2014. She described him as intensely charming and quietly terrifying. He never got loud. That was the thing. When he was angry, he just got calm. Like, deadly calm. After a bad breakup, she claimed Leonard had sent her a message that read, "You don't leave me. You vanish from me." She never reported it. But now, years later, she said something else. There was a time I thought someone was following me. My dog went missing. My tires were slashed. And one night, I swear to God, someone broke in. They didn't take anything, just moved things around. Left the closet door open. Meanwhile, Ava had begun to speak more openly during her trauma sessions. One afternoon, she mentioned something that hadn't come up in any interview. Uncle Leo told Mommy he had secrets in the woods. The therapist asked gently what that meant. He said, "That's where the girls are." The room fell silent. Ava, only 8 years old, had unknowingly repeated what might be Leonard's confession. By day 4, a timeline had formed. Leonard Mitchell had likely killed Sierra Dalton in 2012, and possibly other women in the years that followed. Danielle, through her own research, had discovered that and tried to bring it to light. He silenced her. He killed Trish, perhaps out of rage or necessity. And now he was gone. The manhunt widened to 3 states. Tips poured in from Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. But Leonard had vanished into America's backwoods, slipping through state lines like a ghost. The question now wasn't just where he was. It was who else had helped him, and who else might die to keep the truth buried. The trees stood like silent witnesses, tall, ancient, and still. Beyond the paved roads of Cedar Hill, past rusting fences and forgotten mailboxes, the woods stretched for miles. Locals called it Crow Ridge Forest. A place kids dared each other to go after dark. A place where screams wouldn't echo. A place, as Danielle had written, where secrets rot in the soil. And it was there the search turned next. Because Leonard Mitchell had once lived on the edge of those woods. And Danielle had hinted, however subtly, that something was buried beneath the leaves and loam. Now it was time to find out what. After Danielle's hidden letter and the chilling video were made public, the FBI joined the case. Their behavioral analysis unit quickly profiled Leonard Mitchell as a classic organized killer. He was methodical, intelligent, always one step ahead. But he also had patterns. And there was one place he returned to time and again, the old hunting shack. It was on a neglected 13-acre lot once owned by Leonard's uncle, situated near the dense core of Crow Ridge Forest. Leonard had spent summers there as a teenager and again as an adult when he briefly lived in Cedar Hill after his divorce. Neighbors said he was quiet, polite, a bit of a loner. They'd often see him hauling supplies in and out of the woods, shovels, coolers, even large tarps. No one asked questions. Now, a search warrant had been granted. On the 5th morning of the investigation, agents in tactical gear entered the forest alongside trained cadaver dogs and forensic teams. At first, it was routine: brush clearing, drone scans, heat mapping. But about 400 yards beyond the visible trail, one of the dogs began to bark and wouldn't stop. They'd found the shack. It was a small, single-room structure with peeling paint, rusted hinges, and a metal door that had been recently reinforced with a padlock. The lock had already been cut. Someone had been here before them. Inside, it was worse than anyone imagined. There was no furniture, just a stained mattress, an unplugged chest freezer, and walls lined with plastic sheeting. Hooks hung from the ceiling. A blood-stained hammer rested beneath the mattress. But it was what they found buried beneath the floorboards that would finally reveal Leonard's full depravity. Using ground-penetrating radar, investigators discovered a 6-foot-deep chamber beneath the shack's floor. It had been dug out and crudely reinforced with plywood. Inside were 2 shallow graves, one long disturbed, the other sealed tight. In the first grave, they found scraps of a denim jacket and bone fragments. Dental records confirmed the impossible. Her body had been there for nearly 13 years. The second grave, fresher, held a different horror: another female body, wrapped in plastic. The decomposition was advanced, but the tattoo on her ankle made identification swift. Her name was Carrie Bell, a young woman who had vanished from a neighboring town just 4 months earlier. Her case had barely made the news. Now, she was part of the Robinson case. And she wasn't the last. Also inside the shack, hidden beneath the loose floor tile, was a sealed leather notebook. It was Leonard's journal, or rather, his ledger of victims. Inside were 7 names. Only 2 had been previously reported missing. The rest were unknown. No police files. No Amber Alerts. Just women, likely living on the margins, disposable in Leonard's twisted mind. Each entry included a name or nickname, a date, a location, and a chilling final note, erased. The final entry was dated 3 days before the Robinson family massacre. The name listed, Danielle R. No other entry had been marked so prominently. Beneath her name, Leonard had written, knows too much, smart, dangerous, must erase thoroughly. Forensics teams began analyzing the shack's interior. Blood spatter patterns confirmed what they feared. At least 5 women had been assaulted and killed inside that room. Traces of DNA found under the floorboards matched no one in the criminal database, meaning more unidentified victims. There were also video cameras hidden inside the structure, although the footage had been wiped. But on an old flash drive buried in the dirt, investigators recovered fragments of recordings. Choppy, corrupt files. Screams. A woman begging. Leonard's voice calmly instructing someone. Stop crying. It'll be over soon. No face ever appeared. But the voice, the cold stillness of it, was unmistakably Leonard's. Back in Cedar Hill, Ava Robinson was continuing her trauma therapy. Her drawings, once filled with birthday cakes and unicorns, had changed. Now she was sketching trees. Trees with eyes. Trees with red roots. Trees hiding girls with excess over their mouths. And one afternoon, she quietly handed her therapist a drawing she had made in secret. It showed her Uncle Leo. But in this picture, he wasn't smiling. He was standing in the woods, digging a hole. Behind him were 3 women, faceless, their arms bound. The therapist asked gently, "Did you see this happen?" Ava's voice was barely a whisper. "No, but he told me about it. Said the woods keep secrets better than people do." Among the many people now pulled into the investigation, one stood out. Leonard's mother, Marion Mitchell. She was living in a senior facility 2 towns over. In her 70s, sharp-eyed and bitter, Marion hadn't spoken to Leonard in over a year. But when investigators visited her, she asked a single question. Did he finally kill Trish? That stopped them in their tracks. Marion explained that Leonard had always been off. As a boy, he tortured animals. As a teen, he'd become obsessed with a girl who moved away. He never took rejection well. And when his own father tried to intervene, Leonard nearly killed him with a wrench. It was labeled an accident. Marion had tried to report things over the years, but no one listened, or they didn't want to see. He was good at pretending, she said. Real good. But he was always a monster. When asked if she believed he'd killed before, Marion looked them dead in the eyes. I know he has. I found a necklace once. It wasn't Trish's. He said it was for his collection. I should have gone to the police. I didn't. And now look. With evidence mounting, Leonard Mitchell was now wanted in connection with 8 murders across 3 states. He had been added to the FBI's 10 most wanted list. But Leonard had vanished without a trace. No cell signals. No credit card use. No security footage. He was either dead or hiding in a place even he knew well, the forests of America's forgotten places. But authorities were closing in. A tip from a hiker in southern Arkansas claimed they saw a man matching Leonard's description camping near a fire, alone, carrying a hunting knife and canned food. Another tip came from a gas station clerk in Mississippi. The man paid in cash, barely spoke, but had a burn scar on his right hand, just like Leonard. The net was tightening. And somewhere, in the still of the woods, Leonard Mitchell was watching, waiting, maybe even planning his next move. The forest was damp with fog the morning they found her. Tucked inside a narrow ravine just 10 miles from Crow Ridge, a hiker's German shepherd had strayed off the trail and begun barking wildly. When the man followed, what he discovered was more than a body. It was the missing piece of a nightmare no one had fully understood until now. The grave was shallow and fresh. A thin sheet of plastic barely concealed the face of a woman who looked almost peaceful, if not for the ligature marks around her throat and the stab wound under her ribs. She was Jennifer Green, a former Cedar Hill sheriff's deputy. A name that, until now, hadn't shown up in any investigation reports. But Jennifer had once worked a cold case. And it was her final months in law enforcement that brought her straight into the shadow of Leonard Mitchell. As detectives began retracing Jennifer's life, something became clear. She knew Leonard Mitchell. Not just in passing, but personally. 12 years ago, Jennifer had briefly dated him. After their relationship ended, she left the sheriff's office quietly and moved to Little Rock. No formal resignation letter. No fanfare. She'd told co-workers she needed a break, and later opened a small antique store. But a deeper dive revealed she'd filed a sealed internal complaint against another officer, alleging corruption, evidence tampering, and obstruction in a missing persons case. That case. Sierra Dalton. Jennifer believed the case had been shut down prematurely, and she suspected Leonard Mitchell knew more than he let on. But no one listened. Or maybe, someone did. After the discovery of Jennifer Green's body, the FBI re-examined Danielle Robinson's journal. There were dozens of doodles, names, cryptic arrows, and notes she'd scrawled in the margins. On one page, drawn faintly in red pen, was a map. A crude one, but with familiar points. The shack, the Robinson home, Crow Ridge. But in the top right corner, where she had drawn a jagged X, were the initials. JG. She helped. She tried. It was no coincidence. Danielle had learned something. Maybe through Leonard himself, or maybe by sneaking into his belongings during one of his visits. She knew Jennifer had tried to stop him. And for that, Jennifer had to die. It was a national manhunt now. Leonard Mitchell had become the symbol of small-town horror and systemic failure. The FBI circulated age-progressed renderings, assuming he may have altered his appearance. But deep down, they didn't think he'd fled far. Leonard was a control freak. He wouldn't leave behind his trophies, his territory, his rituals. And so they set a trap, one designed to bait his ego. A press conference was held just outside Crow Ridge. The lead agent declared on live television, "We believe Leonard Mitchell has fled. He's a coward, and he knows it's only a matter of time before we dig up everything he's buried." They waited. 2 days passed. Then 3. On the 4th night, a motion sensor camera rigged inside the hunting shack captured movement. A man, cloaked in black, wearing a mask, entering the shack with a duffel bag. He didn't know the place was wired. He didn't know they were closing in from every side. And when the tactical team surrounded him, guns drawn, the man turned, but didn't run. He raised his hands and smiled. Leonard Mitchell said nothing for the first 12 hours. He sat in the interrogation room, staring at the mirrored glass, tapping his fingers like he was keeping time with a song only he could hear. When they finally asked him about Danielle Robinson, he leaned in and whispered, "Smart girl. Too smart." He wouldn't confess. But he didn't have to. The evidence was overwhelming. The ledger, the shack, the DNA, the witness sketches, Ava's testimony. Piece by piece, the puzzle revealed a predator who had operated in plain sight, disguised as an uncle, a neighbor, a friend. And as investigators traced his movements, they found his trail stretched far wider than they knew. Missouri, Oklahoma, Georgia, small towns, forgotten women, cold cases that now had a name. When it was over, the tally was staggering. 12 confirmed victims. 4 more suspected. 2 still missing. But the worst wound was what he left behind in Cedar Hill. The Robinsons, gone. Danielle, the voice of truth, silenced too soon. Ava, scarred but alive. And a town that would never celebrate another birthday the same way again. 1 year after Leonard's arrest, Ava Robinson, now 9, wrote a letter that was read aloud at his sentencing hearing. It was handwritten in blue marker, folded neatly in pink paper. It said, "You tried to break us, but I'm still here. I remember Mommy's laugh. I remember Danielle singing me to sleep. I remember the cake we didn't get to eat. You don't win. I do." The courtroom wept. Leonard did not flinch. He was sentenced to 17 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. He was transferred to a federal maximum security facility in Colorado, where he now sits, alone, forgotten by the world he tried to break. In the years that followed, the Robinson case sparked change. Cedar Hills Police Department was overhauled. New leadership, new training on domestic abuse response and missing persons protocol. Danielle Robinson was posthumously awarded the Medal of Civilian Courage. Her journal was donated to a true crime archive, and her story inspired a best-selling book. And Ava. She was adopted by her aunt and now speaks at conferences about surviving trauma. At just 12, she told a crowded auditorium in Dallas, "Monsters don't always hide under beds. Sometimes they sit at the birthday table. But if you listen, really listen, someone's always trying to warn you." When the birthday party ended in murder, the world lost a family. But it also found a truth long buried. That evil wears many faces. And sometimes, it smiles while handing you a slice of cake. But the brave, like Danielle, shine even in the darkest rooms. And little girls like Ava, they grow up to become the voices their loved ones no longer have. This wasn't just a massacre. It was a message. Listen to the ones no one believes. Because sometimes, they're the only ones standing between life and death. What did you think of the case? Please share your thoughts in the comment below. If you want more video like this, please be sure to like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more true crime videos. See you in the next one.